fan base. I don't know if it'll happen, but we will see. What pin you think falls first?
Well, I mean that the timing doesn't matter, but the priority is Jaelan Phillips. I mean that's you didn't need a poll. It's good that the fans have picked up on that, but that's the priority of the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's their number one goal. Um, how quick it happens, it's going to happen pretty quickly, as I said yesterday. I mean, by March 11th, you're going to know where Jaelan Phillips is going to be. Now, does that mean first 2 minutes? The Eagles are probably trying to, not probably, the Eagles are trying to get it done right now before free agency starts.
Right.
My guess is Jaelan Phillips is going to want to see what the market will bear, because the market might bear a hell of a lot more than people think.
Yeah.
So that's my own guess, is he'll want to see what's out there. And then if he gets the monster deal, somewhere between 25 30 million, say, then, you're hopeful that he comes back to the Eagles. I think he will. And then it's a Howie Roseman decision. And there'll be a walkaway number. We don't know what that is. But certainly 30 would, I think the Eagles wouldn't get involved at that level. 25-ish, I think that might be the ceiling. But they definitely, I'm glad the fans picked up on that, because there's no debate about it. I mean, that's not me speculating. Their priority is re-signing Jaelan Phillips. And if they can't get it done, they got to toggle pretty quickly. And I'm sure that's what he does best, is those contingencies. And some of the other guys, who, would be cheaper. I mentioned.
How about a more expensive guy, John? I saw from Albert Breer, credible reporter, puts out, we should know soon enough which path the Raiders are taking, with teams like Dallas, Chicago, Baltimore, Buffalo, New England, and Philadelphia and the Rams keeping tabs on his availability. So that's the first sign I've seen of them actually maybe being in the Maxx Crosby sweepstakes.
Yeah, I think that would be too expensive for the Eagles, but, I haven't gotten the feeling that they think about him the same way as they think about, Myles Garrett or Micah Parsons, players I think they would have gone overboard with. That's just, I just haven't heard the name. Now, part of that could be they don't play the Raiders a lot. They don't deal with the Raiders a lot. Cleveland's been here numerous times, and the Eagles have gone out to Cleveland in training camp for joint practices. Vegas is so far away. You don't have that familiarity. Although Brandon Hunt's there, Anthony Patch is there, John Spytek is there, all former Howie employees.
Yep.
Boy, he's going to be really expensive in both ways, not only literally from the contract standpoint, but from the assets you have to give. This is not a free agent. I think that would change it. So I think that's very unlikely. And I think, you sort of go from, I mentioned Kwity Paye yesterday, the Penn State kid from the Chargers. Those are probably, but there's talk they might franchise him, by the way, which I find hard to believe. But, when we only have till 4:00 today for that to come down. But I think you're at that second level on the free agent market, which isn't that deep. And one of the reasons why Jaelan Phillips, a lot of people think he's going to get a lot of money, because it's not a deep group. As a whole, but certainly on the edge, most of the big name edge guys are. Trey Hendrickson is 32. Khalil Mack is 35. Hassan Reddick is 32. Joey Bosa is 31. Leonard Floyd's 34. That's typically not where the Eagles want to do. Now, if it comes down to it and you have to sign somebody to a 1-year deal, maybe, but Quiddy pays 28. He's a guy. Adopi Owa is 28. So those are guys that could be answers for multiple years, but it's not a deep group when you're talking about multi-year answers to the issue. So yeah, I mean, if they don't get Jaelan Phillips, make no mistake, that is not for a lack of trying.
Yeah, well, we'll see what ends up happening. John, how much do you put into this line of thinking? I'm going to go to one of our viewers here. I think this is a good thought process, or at least something worth considering here. Here's Brian Fleming. What's up, Brian? He says this: Fangio is leaving. Spending $25 million on a guy that is catered toward a DC that's departing doesn't make sense. And then he says this: let's say they bring in Schwartz. He's not going to want a guy dropping back in coverage or an edge setter. He'd want a Maxx Crosby type. Now, I'm not saying they're going to sign a guy directly tailored for Schwartz or that style, but I do think it's a fair thought process. Vic was contemplating retirement this offseason. If you just say, okay, Vic's got 1 year left, does that change maybe the evaluation and the thought process on giving Jaelan Phillips a multi-year contract that keeps him in Philly for a long time? How do you think the Eagles see that? And then also, how do you see that part of it?
Well, I think catering is too strong of a word. I think that's an advantage they have with Jaelan Phillips because he's played his best football under Vic Fangio, but he's been very good without Vic Fangio as well. He's just a good football player. So I think that part of it. But to Howie's point, when he was talking about the offensive line, when he was talking to us, and he said, are we going to change our philosophy now that Jeff Stoutland isn't here? He said maybe a click. And, but you can't worry about 2027. There's good and bad to having Vic Fangio. The good is pretty obvious. The bad is his age, and he's thinking about retiring every year. But he might not retire. And yeah, if he does retire, Jim Schwartz would be at the top of the list. As he seems like he's going to take this season off. And it is, maybe Maxx Crosby is a better fit a little bit for Jim Schwartz is just going to play a lot of wide nine. Maybe that's the case, but you don't do that with 1 year in advance. And they just believe Jaelan Phillips is really good. And I would argue, and I've said argue from a well-rounded perspective, and the drop stuff, forget about the drop stuff. That's so overrated. When it works, like with Alex Hunt, people get excited about it. It's a handful of plays. It's a curveball. It's like a fastball pitcher, but he needs a curveball because he can't throw out there, and you can't throw. Well, nobody throws 100 pitches. What do they throw? 80 pitches now. You can't throw 75 fastballs. They'll just sit on it. You got to throw a curveball. That's what Vic does. It really goes back to Dom Capers. You're trying to fool the quarterback. They're assuming the guy's right. You drop him, and hopefully he doesn't see him, and he throws it right to him like it happened with Alex Hunt a couple of times last season. That's it. It's a curveball. People overrate it to a ludicrous degree. They just think Jaelan Phillips is a really, really good football player. Not about he's really good because he's with Vic Fangio. He's going to be really good with anybody. That's their philosophy. That's their belief in Jaelan Phillips.
Well, I do think it's still relevant to consider, what the future holds. And I don't know. Do you think he's that good? I mean, I think he's a great player, but
I was stunned how good he was. Two things stunned me about Jaelan Phillips. One, how big he is. It's just, man.
Yeah, he's a big dude.
He's impressive physically. You could see why he was a top tier draft pick. And then second, how well rounded he was. He can rush the passer, he can set the edge, he can defend the run, he can move inside. Very versatile. which, to me is an advantage over Maxx Crosby because Max is very good at what he does, but he's not nearly as versatile. Now, that's not going to resonate with people. Same thing with tight ends we're talking about. Well, Dallas had 13 touchdowns, and he had his worst run blocking season as a pro. What helped more, and what affected the Eagles' offense more? I would argue the fact they couldn't block on the edge overwrought what he did, and he had a great season from a touchdown perspective. Same thing with Jaelan, but people want sacks. Maxx Crosby's a proven, demonstrated closer. To keep using the Jim Schwartz baseball analogies, what would you rather have? The great starting pitcher who can do everything or the closer? Well, when it's the ninth inning of a 3-2 game, you want the closer. But to get to the 3-2 game, you need the starter. So pick your poison. I'd rather have the well-rounded guy, but that's me. I get people, want the 15 sack guy. I get it, but I'd rather have the well-rounded player.
Yeah, well, it's fair. If you have the well-rounded starter and the closer blows it, it's not going to work. But if you don't have the good starter, you're not going to have a chance to close it anyway. So it's kind of a what comes first there type of conversation. John, interesting stuff with Phillips.